Welcome to Detroit. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass. You can drown them. And that's what we gotta be. That's who we have to be. Because that's our domain. That is our domain. Because we'll tread water as long as it takes to fucking bury you.
Takes the snap, turns, gives to Montgomery, right side, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions! Yes.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So, folks, I'm going to tell you something right now. This is an episode that is really kind of interesting for me, and the reason that it's interesting is because, for me, this is a kind of episode that I didn't think I was going to have to make at all over the course of my being a Detroit Lions fan or a Detroit Lions podcaster. I never thought I was ever going to have to make this episode because it just never seemed like I was ever going to have this topic come up. The reason why I'm having this conversation is because Colin Cowherd said something yesterday that just absolutely, completely mandated that I had to talk about this. Now, when we're talking about Colin Cowherd, I know there's a lot of people that have varying opinions on him. Some people think he's really good, some people think he's whatever, other people think he's terrible. But let's just call it for what it is. When it comes to Colin Cowherd, he is considered one of the best, sports commentators, sports analysts in the business, and he's one of the biggest names in the business. Other guys like Stephen A. Smith are another. And every so often, I will watch Colin Cowherd like little clips, little this, that, or the other thing from time to time to see what he has to say, not only about the Lions, primarily them, but about other teams around the NFL. And while whenever he might give high praise to the Lions, I'm absolutely over the moon about it, there are times where I have to be like, whoa, dude, calm down, like, cool your jets. Like, this is kind of like, where is this coming from kind of thing. And yesterday, he stated something that even as big of a Lions fan as I am, I was just like, hold on a minute here, dude. Like, you need to cool your jets. Like, you seriously need to calm down. And what specifically Colin Cowherd said yesterday was that he made a prediction, a statement, that Jared Goff was going to go into the Hall of Fame, no doubt about it. Let that one sink in for just half a second. Colin Cowherd stated that in his mind, Jared Goff is going to go into the Hall of Fame, no doubt about it. I'm going to say this right now. While I am the biggest Jared Goff fan in the world, I just simply cannot go along with that statement at this current moment. I just can't. Because let's understand something here. Anybody who's watched my content, anybody who's watched my channel, you all know that I'm about as big of a Goff fan as you're going to find anywhere else. I have been ever since the Lions traded for him. I was a fan of him when he was even with the Rams. But I have been probably the biggest Goff defender that there is on the face of the earth ever since he's gotten here. But even this statement is one where I've just got to be like, but back up here a minute, Colin Cowherd. You like, hold up. Because let's understand this. While Jared Goff is without doubt a top 5 quarterback in the NFL today and is playing arguably as the best statistical quarterback in the NFL at this current moment, the fact of the matter is that saying that he is going to go into the Hall of Fame, no doubt about it, it is by far one of the most reckless statements I have ever heard an analyst ever say, especially Colin Cowherd. First and foremost here, not only is the statement itself reckless, but you have to consider the reasoning behind what Colin Cowherd gave as for partially why he thinks Jared Goff is going to go into the Hall of Fame. No doubt about it. And again, I keep saying no doubt about it because that's the part that really is the reckless part. The no doubt about it, or the no doubt. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Because what Colin Cowherd brought up was that for the coaches that have worked with Jared Goff, whether it's the offense coordinators, quarterback coaches, whatever, most of them that Jared Goff has worked with, they have all gone on to become head coaches in their own right. And that Colin Cowherd says that Goff acts as a subsidy for them in the process by how well he plays, and that because of his high level of play, that in turn makes it to where other teams want those guys that coach Jared Goff as their head coach. Now, Colin Cowherd's absolutely right in that regard. He's absolutely correct, because there have been 4 different coaches that have worked directly with Jared Goff, either as an offense coordinator or as a quarterback coach, that have gone on to become head coaches. Matt LaFleur, who's now the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, was an offense coordinator for the Rams. Kevin O'Connell, again, an offensive coordinator for the Rams at one point, may have been the quarterback's coach, I can't remember, but I know he worked with him. Ben Johnson, offense coordinator here in Detroit for 3 years. Zach Taylor, the quarterback's coach for also the Rams at one point. All 4 of those guys are now head coaches in the NFL. LaFleur's the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. Kevin O'Connell's the head coach of the Vikings. Ben Johnson's the head coach of the Bears. Zach Taylor is the head coach of the Bengals. It's kind of odd, though, that 3 out of those 4 guys are now head coaches of rivals that Jared Goff has to play twice every year. But I'm going to say this right now. The fact of the matter is that is not even close enough to merit a Hall of Fame selection. Not even damn remotely close. Because that kind of notion is something that is important for head coaches. Because one of the things that head coaches are, measured on, other than winning, Super Bowls and having Pro Bowl players, All-Pro players, all that nonsense, is how many of your assistant coaches have then gone on and left you and become successful head coaches in their own right. That's why it's called establishing trees. But that's something that head coaches are measured on, not quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are not measured on how many of their coaches then go on to become head coaches themselves. It's definitely a nice flex, but that's not a reason that's going to get you into the Hall of Fame. That's not a reason that Hall of Fame voters are going to determine whether or not your ass gets into the Hall of Fame and has a bust in Canton. That's not going to happen. It's a nice flex, but past that, it means nothing to Hall of Fame voters. Rather, what determines if a quarterback gets into the Hall of Fame is 3 primary things: Super Bowl wins, stats, and impact on the game. Now, for Goff, he can already at least state that he has been to a Super Bowl, albeit he lost that outcome. The plus side, though, currently for Jared Goff right now is that he's playing at an elite level with an elite team. So he has an outstanding opportunity for the next several years to not only win a Super Bowl, but multiple Super Bowls. However, though, until that happens, you cannot make a definitive argument like what Colin Cowherd is trying to say, because in essence what you're then trying to do is you're trying to cash a check that, you can't pay for because you haven't deposited any funds for. You're trying to cash a check that you have not deposited a single fund into the bank account for. And let's put this in the perspective of what I'm trying to talk about right now. The Lions have the great potential to win a Super Bowl or multiple Super Bowls over the next couple of years. And thus so does Jared Goff. But until they put that cash in that bank account, you cannot write a check for the Hall of Fame writers and voters without expecting it to get bounced by the voting committee. It's not going to happen. Voting committees for the NFL Hall of Fame and the voters themselves, until you've actually won that Super Bowl, it's like, okay, great, but where's the cash? Where's something that we can actually state, yeah, here's a good reason why this player should be in the Hall of Fame? That's ultimately what I'm trying to get at here. So without that Super Bowl win, the argument kind of becomes a little bit null and void and a little bit dead in the water for Jared Goff. And again, I'm one of the biggest Jared Goff fans you're going to find. I don't think you're going to find a bigger one than me. Now, as far as the stats are concerned, Goff is definitely within the top echelon of quarterbacks in that category and has shown that if stats were the primary measure for getting into the Hall of Fame, he definitely would be considered for it. But again, stats are secondary to Super Bowl wins. And while his statistical prowess and efficiency puts him in a great preparatory spot for the Hall of Fame, it does not guarantee him a spot. Quarterbacks today are expected to put up great stats. Otherwise, they're not going to retain their starting job, because this is a league which plays heavily into quarterbacks being able to put up gaudy numbers. However, I will put a caveat on Jared Goff in terms of his stats, because in the sense that while his stats are great, his stats are heightened in terms of the measure of importance that they have, because no one has ever claimed that Jared Goff is a physical specimen or a gifted quarterback in terms of a generational talent. Nobody's ever said that. Nobody has ever claimed that Jared Goff has, the throwing potential or the throwing prowess or natural ability to throw a football like a Dan Marino. Nobody says that he can run like a gazelle like Lamar Jackson. But what Goff may not have in terms of, the physical talents or the physical gifts, he does make up for that in the sense of the intelligence and mental acuity he has. In that respect, Jared Goff is very, very, very similar to Peyton Manning. Because think about it, Peyton Manning was never ever once considered a generational quarterback in terms of his physical gifts. He didn't have the strongest arm. He wasn't the fastest guy on the field. But what made Peyton Manning a generational talent, a generational quarterback, was his mind, his intelligence, that 1 square foot of real estate up there. That is what Jared Goff has. Jared Goff has one of the most ridiculously intelligent brains when it comes to understanding the football position of quarterback than almost any other quarterback on the field. His mind is as sharp as a Japanese katana in that regard. And that makes him very much like, Peyton Manning in the NFL of today. And further, what also adds to Jared Goff's importance and weight of his stats is that the narrative that has long been skewed against him by the national media, because think about it, the entire time that Jared Goff has been in the NFL, everybody has said the same thing about Goff, that he has constantly been propped up by great offensive-minded coaches. And that prejudice has followed him virtually the entire course of his career. But yet, over the entire course of said career, Goff has overcome that prejudice and proven those who have doubted him wrong time and time again. Especially with his time here in Detroit. Because again, when Goff left the Rams, when he was shipped out of town, he was traded here, everybody, and I mean everybody that was a national analyst, all said the same thing. Goff is not going to be successful in Detroit. Goff will be one and done there as a starter. His career is done. He is done as a starting quarterback. The only reason he's a starter in Detroit is because they don't have anybody better. That was literally the narrative. That was literally the storyline 5 years ago. Well, think about it. Since Jared Goff came to Detroit in 2021, his stats are immaculate. Since 2021, he is the third best completion percentage out of all quarterbacks in that time frame. He has the second most passing yards, only behind Patrick Mahomes. He's tied for fourth highest in terms of passing average per throw, fourth highest in terms of passing touchdowns. He's got the 8th highest pass touchdown percentage rate per throw. He is tied for second lowest in terms of pass interception rate per throw. And on top of that, he's got the 4th highest passer rating out of all quarterbacks. And I think he's either 4th or 3rd highest in the amount of wins since 2021. That is impressive. Why? Because of the narrative that surrounded him when he came to Detroit, but then also consider the team he went to at the time he went to them. He came to the Detroit Lions after Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia absolutely destroyed that team. And literally, in the time frame since then to now, Goff has helped make this team into the powerhouse, the juggernaut, the Super Bowl contender that it is. That is something that you cannot overlook. That is something that has a massive amount of importance when it comes to Goff's stats. That's why I put that caveat there, because it is important. It is going to add a substantial amount of weight to that viewpoint. But the problem is that despite all of that, you have to add even something else on top of it. Goff was, as I said, left for dead, completely thrown away as a piece of trash But yet, as I also just stated, he has absolutely thrived as a pinnacle piece for the Lions revival and is a huge reason for their sustained success over the last 4 years. Think about this. Over the last 4 years, the Lions have had the best amount of sustained success that they have had since the 1950s, when arguably they were the dynasty of the decade in the 1950s. And again, that is impressive considering the long-standing history that the Lions have had as a franchise in the NFL. But as much as I'm trying to put that out there as a huge amount of weight and significance and importance to Goff's stats and his success here in Detroit, it does not, again, make him have the ability to be a no-doubt Hall of Famer like what Colin Cowherd is saying. It does not automatically put him in. The only way that Goff is going to get in as an automatic into the Hall of Fame is when he wins a Super Bowl and hoists the Lombardi Trophy. Now, if he does that with the Detroit Lions, a team that has been cursed for as long as it had and viewed as long as it has of not ever being able to win a Super Bowl, that is going to, again, be an automatic no doubt. But until then, it's reckless and premature for Colin Cowherd to say that. Which is why the final piece that I talked about, the impact on the game, is how important Goff winning a Super Bowl here in Detroit is, not only for the city of Detroit and for the team, the Lions, but it's also for his legacy. Because think about this. The impact that Goff will have on the game is not in terms of, perfecting the forward pass like quarterbacks prior to him. It's not going to be in terms of, winning Super Bowls like Tom Brady or something like that. His impact, the measure of it is not going to be something that's measurable like that. It's going to be measured in the symbolic nature of the Lions winning a Super Bowl. It's pure symbolism. But that amount, dude, I'm going to say it right now, that symbolism is never ever going to be topped unless the Browns somehow manage to win a Super Bowl, which as they currently stand, they're not even close. And I'm going to say this again because it cannot be stated enough. The Lions are a team that everyone thought would never win a Super Bowl, never come anywhere close to winning a Super Bowl. But yet Goff has literally gotten within a whisker of getting to one with the Lions. And the reason why that's important is because the Lions have been viewed as eternally cursed from ever getting to or winning a Super Bowl. And again, add on top of that, like I just said about Goff, a quarterback that many thought was not only a byproduct of the great offensive minds that he supposedly played under, but at the same time, never being able to actually take a team and lead it to win a Super Bowl. That's always been the knock against Goff. But yet think about this. Goff with the Detroit Lions right now is considered the best team in the NFL, and in some analysts' opinion, the best quarterback in the NFL. Could you imagine the impact on the game that Goff has by taking the one franchise that everybody thought was never going to get to a Super Bowl and win it, and by himself also be viewed as the one quarterback that could never win a Super Bowl without somebody being there to prop him up, all of a sudden now doing that, after losing the supposed offensive genius he had last year in Ben Johnson, for a guy that coming in everybody viewed as plain, boring, uninspirational, not creative, behind an offensive line where the entire middle of it had to be completely reshuffled with two rookies in essence, and now you take the Detroit Lions all the way to the very top of the mountain and they win a Super Bowl? Dude, that is an impact on the game that you are not going to be able to top anytime soon. That is why Goff must win a Super Bowl, or he must win a Super Bowl with the Lions. And if he does, then yes, he is a no-doubt Hall of Fame quarterback. And he will also be no doubt at all the Lions' greatest all-time quarterback as well, and one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. But until that happens, what Colin Cowherd said as being a no-doubt Hall of Fame quarterback, it's reckless, it's premature, and even as big of a Goff fan as I am, I'm telling y'all, do not listen to that. That is one of those where Colin Cowherd, you should have not let that one come out of your mouth, and you should have pumped the brakes before you even let that thought fester in your brain. Because as big as of a Goff fan as I've ever been, I have never once thought that Goff was a no-doubt Hall of Fame quarterback right now. If he wins a Super Bowl, he is a no-doubt Hall of Fame quarterback. But until that happens, again, you cannot be trying to cash a check when you have no funds in the bank account to try and make that check work. Until you have put the money in the account of actually winning that Super Bowl, you are trying to cash a check that your ass can't pay for. Until that happens, this is one of those conversations where Colin Cowherd absolutely pulled the trigger way too damn soon. And me saying that as big of a Goff fan as I am, that adds, I think, a huge measure of credibility to it. Because I am the biggest Goff fan you will find, without a shadow of a doubt. But even I'm like, whoa, back the hell up. Back the hell up. But anyway, I just had to talk about this because I was like, man, no. So, having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past, you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and you not yet had a chance to do so, again, highly encourage y'all. Make sure you hit that bell notification icon so you guys never miss any more content that I push out. I hope y'all are having a great day. I hope y'all got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.